What's up? Welcome back to Apex Manhwa. An ordinary art teacher dies in a school fire and wakes up inside the exact fantasy world he was painting, a place where anything he draws becomes real. This is the complete recap of A Painter Who Draws Dungeons, chapters 1 through 16. If you're enjoying these, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Now let's get into it. The day the school caught fire, art teacher Seo Jio walks straight into the flames instead of away from them. He heads for the art room on purpose. If he's going to die anyway, he wants to die in his favorite place, beside the painting on his easel. As the fire closes in, he thinks this is the end, when the canvas he was painting suddenly blazes with light. It has already been a week since he entered the painting, and the storybook cottage in front of him is the very one he drew. His first thought isn't for himself, but for his students. Did the kids evacuate the fire safely? Strange, friendly creatures roam this world, like a plump, three-eyed rabbit, and time flows so oddly he can't tell how long he's really been here. He's worked out the rules of this painted world. Rule number 1. Anything he draws here becomes real, so he paints a single red apple. The painted apples tumble straight off the canvas as real, ripe fruit rolling across the floor. Salt pots, spatulas, flowers, whole crates of vegetables. He can conjure any food he wants, finally free from the cost of eating. But there's a clear limit. He can't draw humans. Whatever person he paints comes out a warm corpse, never a living, breathing soul. Kneeling by the stream with his creatures, he's just relieved he didn't get some terrifying power that would ruin his simple, quiet life. Rule number 2. A golden frame hangs on a tree here, a window through which he can reach the outside world. He can even climb out of the painting entirely, emerging one day from a crate in a dark, abandoned storeroom in the real world. Biting into an apple in the shadows, he learns the truth. 31 years have passed since the fire that killed him. The world has completely changed. Suited mages now scream to wipe it off the face of the earth as they unleash their power. A monster the size of a building rears up, and their magic slams into its fanged jaws. With no confidence to survive a modern society overrun by monsters, he climbs right back into the frame. A portrait should stick to its own life. Rule number 3. This forest is a living ecosystem. He only drew a cabin and trees, yet plants, landmarks, and crystal groves he never painted keep appearing on their own. Every creature in the painting adores him. A little green bird even flutters down to perch on his shoulder, squeaking a greeting. And rule number 4. Glowing windows appear to appraise whatever he holds, naming this red one a mangdong fruit and offering an elixir refining method. Those windows aren't a rule of his forest at all. They're the awakening granted to survivors of the great cataclysm, the people Earth now calls hunters. A game-like prompt pops up asking to view the recipe, yes or no. This, he decides, is what you'd call discovering new content in an unemployed life. Today's lunch is honey-glazed sweet potatoes. No job, just eating and sleeping on repeat, the slow life he missed as a teacher. He's never been happier, and he loves it. Then, crack, his piece splits open, and he turns toward the frame on the tree. A sound from the entrance? Because in the ruined art room in the real world, a secret still sits among the debris. Jio himself became a painting sealed inside the canvas. And now, inside that very portrait, Jio stirs, drawing a slow breath with the faintest curl of a smile. The chapter opens in eerie silence, a lone figure standing motionless before a gilded painting, not making a sound. It is Seo Jio, and his face finally softens with relief, as if some long dread has passed. Inside the canvas is the cozy sanctuary he painted for himself, a place he loves so much he spends nearly all his time here. Elsewhere, 2 scavengers pick through a burned-out, abandoned school and find one painting left untouched by the fire. One of them has an appraisal skill and reads its title aloud, Portrait of Jio, realizing it must have drifted out of a dungeon. Certain the Collector Guild will pay a fortune. They grab it, sure they are about to strike it rich. None of it disturbs Jio, who sleeps peacefully within the painting, enjoying his quiet. sold, and hung in the guild's gallery. The painting's entrance begins shifting on its own. A glowing portal blooms inside the frame, and this is when the ghost sightings start. The guild leader, by Sabayal, an S-class hunter with an appraisal skill, admires his new prize and calls it magnificent. His manager frets that even for a guild named Collector, buying this thing has gone too far. Bai Sabayal only smiles and asks whether he is really telling a collector not to collect. He reminds him how much money they spent on the portrait, insisting he can buy whatever he likes with his own money. And besides, he boasts, this is a piece even the chairman of the Hunter Association wanted. 31 years ago, the Great Cataclysm collided other dimensions with Earth, tearing open dungeons that spilled out monsters. At auction, the association's own chairman bid 200 billion won for the Portrait of Jio. Yet strangely, by Sabayal's appraisal skill, cannot pull a single piece of information from the painting. His manager panics. If even the guild's S-class appraiser cannot read it, what could this thing possibly be? That thing, he warns, is more dangerous than anything they have ever collected. That, by Sabayal answers, is exactly why he wanted it even more. He wonders who it depicts, marveling that human craftsmanship could ever look this alive. Touching the frame, he murmurs it feels as if a real, living human were captured inside. And within the canvas, Jio's eyes suddenly snap open. Bai Sabayal laughs, certain there is no way this is just an ordinary painting. Meanwhile, Jio, the man inside the painting, laughs quietly to himself in his little world, though he admits that for a moment there, he had genuinely gotten scared. Inside his peaceful painted cabin, Seo Jio narrates that lately, for the first time, his safe little life has started to feel threatened. The frame that is his only entrance has been changing, and now a grinning red-haired man knocks on it, asking to chat. Jio flatly thinks, not at all. Through the frame he sees his painting hangs in a lavish gallery, meticulously designed and clearly cherished by its owner. This, he decides, is trouble. Since the frame is his only way out, every trip to gather food risks trespassing, and his real dread is being branded a haunted portrait and burned to ashes. The man stays unfailingly polite as he backs away, promising he will return to see Jio again tomorrow. Out gathering flowers and berries in the painted meadow, Jio suddenly freezes, sensing the man is coming back yet again. Realizing he has no tea set, Jio simply paints one into existence, since anything he draws becomes real. He brews a batch of forest butterfly flower tea using the system's elixir refining method, a new hobby to fill the days of an unemployed man stuck in a painting. The tea supposedly aids healing, but he cannot test it because ever since he fell into the painting, every bodily function has vanished. He never feels cold or hot, never sweats, never needs a bathroom. He has, he concludes, evolved into a superior being and is now officially liberated from ever cleaning a toilet again. The real problem. For 11 straight days the man has returned to the frame, pitching himself while Jio stays silent. Even to Jio it looks terribly sad. The man worries Jio must be lonely all alone. Jio disagrees, treasuring his harmless, cozy, introvert couch potato life. An appraisal window even rates the man 4 stars safe, warm, and relatively harmless. And yet something about him is off. The man reveals what he actually wants, offering Jio a sinful human or a flawless pure human, as if presenting an offering to a deity. In this day and age, he says, finding a sinner is easy. Any item, any contract, any terms, he insists, just name the specific sinner you desire. To Jio, it is all way too overwhelming. He can already picture an uncontrollable future unfolding if he responds even once, so he refuses to answer. The gallery staff lets slip who the man really is, the chairman of one of South Korea's top 3 conglomerates. Draining as he is, Jio judges the chairman harmless and bets that, like today, he will eventually run out of steam and give up. But if anyone ever decided to destroy or burn the painting, his entire world could vanish with it, and he is not ready to be burned at the stake just yet. So Jio resolves to reclaim ownership of his only entrance and finally make contact with the outside himself. That night at 4 in the morning, a stranger slips into the gallery, clearing its security rules and confirming the humidity and temperature, coming to inspect the portrait of Jio. But the intruder finds a landscape, not a face, and mutters in confusion that they were told it was a portrait. This one is nothing like the chairman, a hooded, purple-haired figure with glowing red eyes, who steps to the painting and speaks directly into it. "Hello, would you like to talk to me?" the stranger asks, reaching for the frame, as something slips down into Jio's painted world and his only sanctuary is breached. The recap shifts to the collector, one of South Korea's top 3 guilds, run out of a gleaming corporate tower. Its gallery is a closed world, open only to its owner, some 300 licensed hunter curators, and vetted buyers permitted to purchase the artwork. The guild leader, by Sabayal, collects anything he deems art. Even when a piece is secretly a living monster, he doesn't care in the slightest. But lately the gallery has a problem. The staff whisper that it's haunted. They say there's a ghost. In just 2 weeks, the gallery on the 5th basement floor has drawn 17 separate ghost complaints. The guild's HR has quietly smothered every rumor before it can spread, but no one believes they can keep the lid on forever. The case falls to their curator, Yoo Seong-un, an A-class hunter known as the gardener of the snowfield. Prized enough to be offered a top administrative post, Seong-un waves it off. The last thing he wants is to stand out. The witness reports are eerily consistent. A man near 188 centimeters, pale skin, black hair, wrapped in a black cloak, always identical, and by every account strikingly handsome. For a monster supposedly tucked away inside a gallery, he seems to have no intention of hiding himself at all. What unsettles them most is that he appears this openly, this often, and yet there hasn't been a single casualty. And that shouldn't be possible. Of every entity ever to emerge from the dungeons, not one has been harmless to humans. When he meets a staff member, he simply trades names, offering his own with unnerving calm. "Hello, I am Seo Jio." Even when they're too terrified to meet his eyes, he keeps the conversation going, completely ordinary and mundane. And at the end, he leaves a gift. To their shock, it's only food, a cookie, a lollipop, a box of chocolates. What kind of monster is this domestic? Uneasy, they analyze the ingredients, testing the treats on prison inmates the guild leader keeps on hand. The result stuns them. It isn't poison. It's medicine. Somehow his ordinary-looking food carries real, healing properties the research team still can't explain. He can read a living being's exact condition, then create things that directly affect it, skilled enough to slip past the guild's tight security and get himself displayed. They conclude he must be an extremely high-rank monster, and his goodwill only complicates matters. One admits it would almost be easier if he just went on a rampage, because a monster's goodwill terrifies them. 11 years ago, a diplomatic delegation to the dungeons all returned as healthy deformities. In the end, a monster is a monster. So the ghost is flagged as a difficult raid, and Seong-un steps forward. This is his specialty, and he'll handle it himself. There's one last detail. The haunting began the exact moment by Sabayal hung a new piece on the 5th basement floor, the Portrait of Jio. Wine in hand, the guild leader hands Seong-un his new assignment. Take charge of this new artwork. And so, curator Yoo Seong-un begins his investigation of the Portrait of Jio. With no idea, the painting is Seo Jio himself. It's 4:29 in the morning. Inside a silent gallery, a lone hunter has spent the pre-dawn hours lying in wait. His target has appeared at last. He's out, he breathes, and the observation begins. Black cloak, black hair, barefoot, a frame around 188 centimeters. Every detail matches the description in the records. The figure surfaces only at dawn, when barely any staff remain, meaning he either knows he's being watched or his activity follows strict rules. Shy or cunning. And since he's a humanoid, the hunter bets on cunning. He triggers a maxed-out sound reading skill to listen in. They call this one a ghost, for how utterly silently he moves. Yet he does catch something, a sound so faint it's like blades of grass brushing together, far too light for a 188-centimeter body. The figure stops before a painting, ringed by exhibits deadly enough that one wrong touch could unleash chaos. He touches nothing at all. He only looks. An art lover, an idler killing time, or a scavenger hunting for something useful. Then the cloaked figure turns. Their eyes meet. The hunter freezes. That single gaze crashes over him as a vision, a hollow-eyed specter staring straight back. It's so dark, yet so bright. At the center of that endless black sits something massive, an entity that radiates pure awe. A presence is here. The vision shatters, and the hunter's composure breaks apart with it. He bolts, sprinting down the hall past a small golden frame on the wall. The frame holds the portrait of Jio, and from where the hunter stands, it looks like the monster simply fled back inside. He can finally breathe. Portrait of Jio investigation, day 1, concluded. But inside his painted forest, Seo Jio is just as rattled. Why on earth was that man hiding in a place like that? Did he hide because he was scared of me? After all, everyone runs without looking back the instant they see him. So Jio resolves to keep playing the part of a harmless portrait, all while quietly hoping the man will come back. Even if forest animals creep close, then flee the moment he reaches out. He finds himself longing for a pet he could cuddle as much as he wants. Day 2. The hunter returns to find the portrait posing perfectly still, and both of them silently relax. His real mission starts now. Figure out what this portrait truly is and whether humans and it can coexist. The portrait makes an offer. Would he like to talk? The hunter smiles and says yes, one of the ways to survive on Earth today. Jio's own appraisal rates the hunter 5 stars for safety. He's a good person. Jio marvels, moved to his core. The silver-haired visitor stands before the golden portrait, showing no trace of fear even as it speaks back to him. The hunter apologizes for what happened the day before, and the portrait quietly notes what a polite, considerate man he is. Jio tells him there is no need to apologize, thanking him for his consideration. When the visitor asks the portrait its name, Jio recognizes the ritual dialogue beginning, the same procedure used with the 17 people before him. Names are the most critical element in a contract that binds souls, and the man frets that letting the portrait hear his could force him into some bizarre bargain. He offers it anyway, smiling. I am Yoo Seong-un. Seong-un asks whether the eyes that met his yesterday were Jio's, and the portrait admits it plainly. Yes, that was me. Then does that mean you can actually come out of the portrait? Yes, I can, Jio answers. Caught looking flustered, the portrait plays it off, while Seong-un marvels that a non-human entity would share so much about itself without hesitation. When he asks why it would tell him so readily, Jio gives the simplest reason, because you asked. You are a good and polite person, Yoo Seong-un. That is why I spoke to you, the portrait says. Seong-un realizes the portrait can distinguish good from evil, and wonders what it does when it faces someone it deems truly wicked. He presses further. Lately a ghost has wandered the gallery handing out gifts, and he asks whether that ghost is also Jio. Flustered, Seong-un backpedals, but the portrait agrees that a talking painting truly does deserve to be called haunted. Still, Jio draws one firm line. However strange he may be, he has never once died. Alone as a painting, he grew curious about the gallery's people and their lives, since anyone left by themselves naturally starts looking for someone to talk to. The staff, he admits, made far better conversation partners than the bright red boss here, prompting Seong-un to ask if he means the Besabial guild leader. The reason the red-haired guild leader got no information from the portrait was simple. Jio judged the man rude and refused to speak to him at all. Seong-un apologizes on his eccentric leader's behalf, and Jio decides that since he did not seem a bad person, it is fine. Usually the portrait's eyes stay closed, so Seong-un asks, can Jio still see them, watching from inside the frame all this time? Jio explains the portrait only opens its eyes when he wills to communicate outward, a truth he first confirmed with a shard of mirror in the burned-down school. With everyone sealed inside the frame, he has no choice but to watch, and he finds the moving pictures interesting. To Jio, the picture was never himself at all, but the humans living on the outside. Seong-un calls it an enjoyable conversation as his second day investigating the Portrait of Jio comes to a close. Elsewhere, a panicked cry warns the guild leader that the thing is dangerous, and the red-haired chairman, sipping his tea with a smile, simply asks what makes it so. An aide reports to his master on the strange portrait kept in the gallery, a being unlike any monster the guild has ever catalogued. The real danger, he warns, is that this creature still believes itself to be fully human. It seems harmless enough now, but if such a soul ever turned, the fallout would be catastrophic. Asked whether he would surrender the painting to the Hunter Association as research, the red-haired guild leader, Seo, flatly refuses. Instead, he wants it courted. Get close to the painter, learn what he likes, and quietly arrange an introduction. Dismissing his aide with a lazy smile, Seo leaves one uneasy question hanging. Is this man trying to bring about the end of the world? Day 3 of the investigation into the Portrait of Jio. The investigator, Yoo Seong-un, sits before the golden frame and asks the painting whether it ever feels lonely. From inside the canvas, Jio answers that he is not lonely at all. He always dreamed of a quiet future without people. He says, a place where he would never have to speak. The silent world inside his painting is, to him, the perfect fulfillment of that wish. Seong-un presses gently. Was Jio once an ordinary human? Yes, he confirms. Before he was sealed inside the canvas, he lived as a man. Monsters born from human memory are usually consumed by rage, yet Jio stays unervingly peaceful. When asked if he ever grows bored, Jio admits that sometimes he does. His cure is a strange one. Usually, he says, he simply has a meal. Inside the painting, he cooks for himself, imagining a dish, gathering the ingredients, and preparing it by hand. Told he could bring enjoyment, Seong-un's mind darkens with grim trades, blood, lifespan, sacrifice, as he asks exactly what Jio means. But the request is oddly simple. Paint an apple directly onto the surface of the portrait. Reluctant to deface an artwork, Seong-un brushes a rough, red apple onto the canvas. Then a hand reaches out from the painting, and Jio takes a bite. The painted apple is solid and real enough to eat. Seong-un can only stare, shaken. The portrait just devoured something he conjured out of nothing. Inside the golden-framed painting, Jio bites into an apple he drew himself. Painted with cheap paint, it's still ripened into fruit with real scent and flavor. Because he exists inside a painting, almost anything he draws becomes real, right down to a finished meal he conjures on days he doesn't feel like cooking. Standing within the frame, Jio asks the visitor watching him whether he finds all of this fascinating. In the gallery beyond the canvas, the man agrees, and Jio announces he will offer a requital to repay the kindness of drawing him that apple. After waking inside the portrait, Jio paints an easel using pigment ground from the gems he made, and everything he draws feels as though it is alive. A system window resolves the promise into a task, ordering him to repay Hunter Yoo Seong-un within a strict time limit, a reminder that even here there are rules to follow. In the real world, the curator Yoo Seong-un cradles the glowing gem Jio conjured out of nothing but a drawing. He studies a crystal structure he has never seen before, stunned that the portrait created it simply by painting it. The stone must have formed deep underground beside the heart of the planet, and Yoo senses it still holds that impossible heat. After days of observation, Yoo concludes the portrait is no monster. He believes Jio is tied to the source, a transcendent entity that manages the balance of the world. 31 years ago, dungeons struck Earth, born from a vein of the source. Monsters are born inside them, while a child of the source is born directly from the source itself. Within the portrait, Jio has painted a whole living world, including roughly 100 chattering bird creatures that flit endlessly around him. Jio explains the birds gather to form pawns and love tucking little objects inside their bodies to decorate themselves, each one with its own distinct taste. Yu lays out the paradox. Jio is clearly a painting yet also human, carries no divinity, so he is no god, yet through his art he can create destiny, the past, even memories. Pressed on whether he could even create a real human, the masked Jio answers only that it might be possible, or it might not. He insists that making a human feels wrong and that he has no desire to try, asking the curator not to think of him as someone special. Back outside, Yu is challenged on whether he truly intends to keep the portrait from the Hunter Association. His employer, a red-haired chairman whose eyes glint gold, makes his own stance unmistakably clear. He declares he wants an artwork, not a weapon, and that this is the very reason he founded his guild and his company. He may hold pride as an art lover, he admits, but he does not carry a single shred of pride as a hunter. No collector expects a master's work to ward off evil spirits or grant good dreams. They're simply curious about the story within and want to protect it with their own hands. Turning the gem Jio made over in his fingers, the chairman warns you that no one can stop that thing. The chapter closes on the portrait glowing quietly in the darkened gallery, its power still far beyond anyone's grasp. The guild has acquired something impossible, a golden-framed painting that speaks back. A natural disaster, they call it, yet one that seems to hold goodwill toward them. Cupping a blood-red gem drawn straight from the canvas, the guild leader marvels that acquiring it was an incredible stroke of luck, an absolute miracle. In his private gallery, laid out with mana and relics, he studies his newest prize and refuses to be foolish enough to throw such a miracle away. His silver-haired curator, Yoo Seong-un, presses him. Is that why he bought Jio? Once the painting surfaced at auction, it was bound to be revealed to the world. So the leader made the first move to head off any disaster. I tend to see quite a lot, he says. His logic is simple. If Jio believes himself to be human, then they simply have to treat him like one. He chides you for being narrow-minded for a gardener. Jio, he insists, operates on a completely different level. Jio dislikes trouble, yet holds no hatred. If someone never resents what makes them uncomfortable, how incredibly kind must they be? He is polite and respects others, forces his rules on no one, and is even afraid of hurting anyone at all. Yu is stunned. Afraid? To a being like Jio, crushing a human should feel like less than a person stepping on an ant. I told you, he is kind. Yu counters that the leader has never once spoken to Jio himself. So how could he possibly know all this? The answer is his rank. An S-class guild leader claims he can read it all just by locking eyes a single time. His orders to you: don't pry into Jio's thoughts and invite disaster. Just be good company and take him outside once in a while. Are you serious? You can hardly believe the assignment he's being handed. The leader says he will trust Yu's discernment. Those eyes that see what normal humans cannot. He'd refuse to surrender Jio to the association, whose research on beings like him amounts to little more than abuse. For Yu was once a gardener, chosen by the being called the garden to tend a fragment of the source, work that quietly shapes the difficulty of countless dungeons. Now, as curator, he buys fish-shaped bread. If Jio's kindness springs from believing he is human, you must do everything he can to maintain that illusion. They trade small talk. Jio claims to be 29, catching 33-year-old Yu off guard that an entity, even by Ariel recognized, is younger than him. Portrait of Jio. Investigation, Day 17. Jio explains the scale of the source. If it were a single human body, a whole garden would be just a blood vessel, a fingernail, a heart, or an eye. He asks whether one must become a gardener at all. Yu admits it isn't a choice, and even now as a curator he cannot abandon that duty. Yu passes the seeds Jio asked for through the frame, and for the first time a bare hand reaches out of the paint and take them. Behind his closed eyes lies a vast snowy mountain and glacier. Jio confesses that having a garden of his own is actually pretty wonderful. Cradling a small golden creature in his hands, he murmurs that he feels the same way. Then Jio makes an offer of his own. Does you ever want to come outside? If he'd like, Jio could show him around. A silver-haired curator weighs a dangerous decision. Making a proposal to the source, he reasons, is no light matter, especially when no one yet knows Jio's true identity. But they can't stop him anyway. And if it's bound to happen, it's wiser to know in advance. Standing before the Portrait of Jio in the Guild Gallery, curator Yoo Seong-un makes his offer. You aren't very familiar with the outside world. Just bring yourself, and I'll guide you. Inside the fantasy world, he painted. Seo Jio mulls the invitation over. Has the time finally come to return to society? Out in reality, his paintings manifest into being, so there's a gap in what people can perceive. To them, he looks terrifyingly bizarre. Even when the staff spoke to him, they seemed distant, as if facing the unknown, like there was a resolution difference between them. Somehow, he liked to close that resolution difference. For now, he wipes his brow in his sunlit garden. His days are quiet and content, right down to the glowing golden bird he finally names Honey for its sweet color. Back in his fairy tale cottage studio, Jio settles in to finish his landscape paintings and earn a sweet sleep after a hard day's work. As his brush moves, the painted sea churns to life, and a prompt surfaces, searching for the corresponding dimension. The magic stirs an old wound, a memory of the school fire that took his life, two figures walking into the flames. Dimension found. The finished canvas glows in his studio, quietly linked to somewhere real. The next morning, a system notification jolts him awake. Whoa, what is this first thing in the morning? Overnight, the system named his 3 landscapes: the breathing sea, animal kingdom, and city of the void. Each painting opens a real dimension he can enter, and the system flags a compatible person he can synchronize with. He's discovering new worlds just by painting a landscape. The rule: the being in that dimension who corresponds to Jio becomes his compatible person. With their consent, he can borrow their soul and body to travel it. 2 candidates surface, Giovanni and Argio, matched by their synchronicity and adaptability with him. Interesting. I'll never be bored again. But City of the Void has no matching dimension at all. Does this mean I just created a brand new dimension? It only makes his life crazier, and he loves it. I'd be crazy not to dive right into this. Trust your dad. Honey, life is a hurricane. Then a new tip. The cure for his resolution difference is to use a compatible person. That's more than enough reason to try. So he taps Giovanni. After a rough flash of transit, Jio lands inside a ghostly, blue-lit apothecary, and Honey didn't make the trip. The system explains that this place is Giovanni's mental world. To Jio, it looks like an old hospital. Then a long, golden-haired figure in white robes appears across the room. His compatible person wears a face that looks just like Jio-san. It is a pleasure to meet you. I am Giovanni of the Batlon family. Seo Jio comes face to face with his compatible person at last, and the black cloak painter quietly gives his name. The stranger marvels that Jio looks like a younger version of himself, guessing the two of them share many other similarities as well. Jio recalls how badly his stiff face was misread in life, some believing he had lost a loved one or hidden a dangerous past. The golden-haired man, once a teacher himself, promises that from now on Jio will finally be able to smile as warmly as he does. A dimensional entry flickers open over the breathing sea, and the stranger insists he will only synchronize with Jio once he has his consent. He asks whether Jio fears or resents him. Admitting the merge is a theft that takes everything simply to explore a new dimension. Jio answers that it is no theft at all, because the man before him is already dead. The blonde soul, named Giovanni, smiles as he explains that his whole homeland was swallowed by the sea and met its end. All that survives that drowned world are the mermaids hiding in its depths. The planet shrunk down like a game board. Bound now by strange new rules, his dying world has become a dungeon. The word stirs Jio's memory of dungeons he first heard, described by curator Yoo Seong-un. Glowing with light, Giovanni says that the moment Jio called his name, he understood the truth. They are both Jio. They are by no means the same person. Yet from this moment his soul dissolves into light to become one with Jio's. He calls it a kind of resurrection, a way for him to live on within the mysterious realm humans name the source. Then, hands clasped, Giovanni makes one humble request: that Jio look after the sun god of his lost world. Jio protests that he is only an ordinary human, but Giovanni reminds him a god is forgotten without believers. To honor the radiant deity, Jio need only remember him and, when the time comes, borrow his power. Jio softens, calling it much like keeping a lonely old man company, something he has done as a volunteer since his college days. One last name surfaces between them, Arya, a student Giovanni could never save. Weeping, Giovanni begs Jio to grant the Little Mermaid Arya a proper ending. A quest window seals the promise, Giovanni's quest, to speak with the sun god and to give the Little Mermaid her ending. As the souls fuse, a flesh-tearing agony seizes Jio, and he cannot tell whose pain he is even feeling. A cold status line reads assimilation rate, 1%, while Jio grits out that he is fine. Fading away, Giovanni confesses he has no regrets, that in the end he was happy. Elsewhere, Yoo Seong-un decides a preventive measure is needed and posts an official guild notice naming the black-cloaked Jio a dawn shift staff member. Word spreads fast, staff astonished by a notice unlike anything the guild has ever issued. They whisper about the ghost from the old rumors, still unsure whether this Jio in the black cloak is truly human or not. A posted notice has convinced the Collectors Guild staff that the black-cloaked visitor haunting the gallery is definitely not human. Their orders are simple: play along and behave. Huddled over the notice, the curators agree that digging into the mystery will only earn them more work. The overworked staff would rather not get paid than do extra work. One just wants to go home and walk his dog, Chaco. They settle on treating the ghost as basically Schrodinger's human, resolving to follow the rules so they don't ruin their own lives. A pink-haired curator clings to the portrait in dread, terrified of the days she must manage it while Yoo Seong-un is away. The cloaked Seo Jio, meanwhile, frets over troubling the staff so much and resolves to buy the curator's dinner sometime. Coffee in hand, Yoo Seong-un tells the guild leader that the apathetic staff were the perfect hire, resolving everything without any internal conflict. The red-haired guild leader laughs that the staff truly couldn't care less, hating extra work more than death itself. Still, given Jio's immense presence, they need the public to believe he is an S-class hunter to prevent any disaster around civilians. Seong-un explains that a child of the source's danger scales with the size of their story, so Jio shrinking to a human level makes him far safer. The guild leader promises to handle any damage short of a massacre, urging Seong-un to make sure Jio has an enjoyable outing. Descending to the gallery, Seong-un braces himself and resolves to rely on Jio's gentlemanly behavior. In the quiet gallery, the cloaked figure waits before his own hanging portrait. The moment Seong-un arrives, something feels off, the oppressive aura strangely absent. Jio now stands as an ordinary black-haired man, calmly saying he arrived early. His eerily perfect tone and the crushing pressure of their rank difference have vanished. Jio says he simply took some measures. He adjusted himself so others wouldn't be startled, and judging by Seong-un's reaction, the attempt has worked. Jio has been assimilating the memories of Giovanni Batalon, a gentle, ambitious painter who treasured daily life with his loved ones above all else. A game-like system tracks his synchronization with Giovanni, the assimilation rate slowly rising on its own. Synchronized with the painter, Jio now feels genuine hunger and can slip in and out of the personality with ease. He now sleeps, eats, and even uses the bathroom, everything he needs to look perfectly human. Cloaked once more, Jio admits he is currently very hungry and suggests they head out. As they walk out together, Seong-un realizes Jio has cut away his own presence to keep from crushing the humans around him. Horrified, Seong-un calls it a terrible act of self-harm and asks if he's all right. Jio only replies that he is perfectly fine. Out in the city at last, Jio muses that even rivers and mountains change over 10 years. To his eyes, the human world has become far more diverse and unique than the last time he briefly stepped into it. Bound to his portrait, the painter steps out into the modern city and takes in the skyline, its sheer scale making his old worries feel small. All around him, hunters stroll the streets openly, gleaming weapons slung across their backs. His silver-haired escort, an A-class curator, suppresses his aura, yet still turns every head he passes. He quietly warns the hooded painter to keep his face covered in public. They head for an elevated surface train, and the painter marvels at the machine gliding above the city as a piece of impossible modern technology. 31 years since he died, he can barely believe how completely the world has changed. The curator hands him a card with no spending limit, telling him to buy whatever he likes. The gesture leaves the painter wary of just how far this man's generosity reaches. Inside the sleek transit hub, the painter notices how few people are around and asks whether there is a reason for the emptiness. As the train pulls in, the curator explains that many people simply cannot afford public transit anymore. Capitalism, the painter notes dryly, is still alive and well. The car is nearly deserted. The gap between rich and poor has only widened. At this early hour, even the usual handful of riders has thinned away. It is the middle of the workday, the curator adds, which leaves the trains emptier still. The painter can scarcely believe what he is hearing. The average workday now begins at 7 in the morning, and the painter darkly wonders whether human rights have vanished from this country. Perhaps, he thinks, haunting a portrait beats returning to a life of wage slavery. Changing the subject, the curator recalls the fish-shaped bungeopang he once gave the painter and promises to hunt down more street food if they are lucky. Takoyaki, egg bread, and fish cakes wait somewhere among the snowy stalls. The painter reflects that this man barely seems to see him as human. Yet he admits, wryly, that it is exactly that blind spot which lets the curator overlook his lack of money and modern sense. Street vendors are vanishing under civil complaints about city aesthetics, the curator explains, and provincial sellers can be barred from the city entirely. It reveals how sharply residents are now divided. He describes the citizen-grade system that sorts everyone by rank. Holding up an ID card, he explains that a city-dwelling hunter with a decent job counts as first grade. A chart lays it bare. B-rank hunters and above are first grade, poorer city residents fall to second, and those from the provinces to third. Below them, the destitute have no papers at all, while criminals and road-red hunters are branded fifth grade. No longer treated as human, they can be killed on sight. This is more than a widening rich-poor divide. The painter realizes the systemic split has become everyone's everyday reality. He asks why people are separated so rigidly. It comes down to defense lines and infrastructure. Among the monsters left undefeated in the Great Cataclysm, some have settled permanently on Earth, forcing humanity to wall itself in. They arrive at a traditional restaurant built, like much of the city, from monster-derived materials tough enough to survive an attack. In a world where a dungeon can tear open anywhere, even the walls must be armor. Public officers and plentiful hunters keep the city safe, the curator says. But out in the resource-starved provinces, a single lapse in vigilance can get a person killed. He mentions he chose this place because it uses no monster meat. Whatever else has changed, the painter finds a bulgogi still absolutely delicious. Outside, the Cheonggyecheon stream stays warm even in deep winter, kept like a greenhouse by magical landscaping. Anyone may enter here, except fifth-grade citizens and hostile monsters. Some creatures have shed their hostility toward humans entirely, like the fluffy cotton budbird whose threads are spun into bandages. The world, it seems, is slowly learning to coexist. At the water's edge, the curator remarks how clear and deep it is, carrying a strangely sweet scent. It is nothing like the odorless water of the painter's past. Invited to dip his feet, the painter lowers them into the warm, shimmering water, and a single tear slips down his face at how beautiful it all is. The surface flickers with a vision of a golden-haired figure sinking through the depths. Then a voice cuts through the moment, naming him by the human name he thought no one here could possibly know, Seo Jio. The black-cloaked ghost of the Collector Guild's gallery introduces himself with a single, polite line. His name is Jio. Curator Yoo Seong-un checks them into a hotel. handing Jio a room key card and setting their dinner reservation for 6. Get some rest, then. See you later, the silver-haired curator says, leaving Jio to settle in. Alone, Seong-un dwells on the thing he glimpsed earlier, something that wore a human shape but clearly was not human. He studies Jio's portrait, noting the ghost has always introduced himself simply as Seo Jio. But the creature defines itself only as Jio, and he reminds himself that no matter how closely it mimics a human, it can never become one of them. Unsettled and drained, Seong-un collapses onto the hotel bed. Meanwhile, Jio marvels at the city sprawled far below the 44th floor window. He cradles Giovanni, the little creature he smuggled in, apologizing that he can't feed it here. Sprawled out and content, Jio plans to make something with the leftover syrup once they get home. Watching him, Seong-un admits that for now, this is still the same gentle Jio he knows. The next day, they ride a boat along the seawater canals toward the restaurant, and Jio suddenly reacts to the water. He leans so far over the edge, chasing the scent of the sea, that Seong-un cries out his name. Seong-un hauls him back, flustered, insisting he only did it because he was worried Jio would get hurt. He asks if Jio likes the sea, explaining that underwater monsters once forced water levels to rise across the whole country. Jio shrugs. He doesn't care for it himself, but he thinks Giovanni likes it. When Jio idly wonders whether there are mermaids here too, Seong-un quietly catches the telling phrase. Belief itself, he explains, gives legends and myths monstrous form, and the shrunken planet has become a dungeon bound by its own rules. A quest window flickers up for Giovanni just as they arrive at their destination. The restaurant, Seong-un notes, was built from the remains of a cleared stationary dungeon. Over dinner, he outlines the dungeon types, including virtual dungeons that can trap 10 ordinary men just for gathering at a convenience store. Jio calls it terribly unfair. This very dungeon was cleared by an ordinary chef whose cooking moved its master to tears, a man who awakened as a chef class and still works the kitchen at 92. Jio calls it a wonderful meal that reminded him of dining with friends, and the words visibly touch Seong-un. They set off for Gyeongbokgung Palace, where Jio recalls old field trips with his students and quietly wonders how those children are faring in a world like this. At a traditional night festival, curator Yoo Seong-un walks the lantern-lit streets in a borrowed hanbok, the black-cloaked painter Seo Jio at his side. He tells him the outfit suits him. For a moment, the ghost simply enjoys being treated like an ordinary person. The festival stirs Seo Jio's memories of his old life as a teacher, guiding students in hanbok and taking their photos on school trips. Drifting through the crowd are glowing, ethereal figures no one else seems to notice. Seo Jio asks what they are. Yu calls them fairy tales or living stories, children born from the source, surprised the painter has never seen them here before. He explains the source as a kind of god of gods. It balances every universe and dimension and lays down the rules, a vast underlying system. The fairy tales only mimic human shape, their nature imitating a concept, so skilled at disguise that no one truly knows their nature. Once no one could perceive these beings, but after the source touched Earth, dungeons appeared and awakened hunters, letting a rare few finally see them. Seo Jio realizes he counts among them, a talent who awakened through a painting, now able to see what others cannot. A scuffle erupts nearby, and a system prompt flickers before Seo Jio, offering a reward if he frames the danger before him. He frames the meek-looking man who seemed to be the victim, and the reading blazes back 5 stars. He is extremely dangerous. A tiny golden living story flutters down and coos beside the painter, a small waterbird spirit drawn to him. At a food stall, he recognizes it as the waterbird Seo Jio once showed him. The painter names the little creature Honey. Yu grows uneasy, wondering how on earth he is supposed to report everything he has learned about the painter. Seo Jio's thoughts darken. He tells himself he should return before he sinks back into old sin and self-destructs. Before leaving, he insists on buying 3 more cups of tteokbokki, and you can only marvel at how much the ghost loves food. Elsewhere, the dangerous man cannot shake his unease. Even with the painter's face hidden, that framing gesture sent a sudden chill through him. He recognizes Yoo Seong-un at the man's side and panics. The cloaked stranger has absolutely had an awakening. For a split second it felt as if every secret was laid bare. Hunters who read minds or peer into the past, he knows, are not that rare. The man is an infiltrator who clawed his way up to priest to stage the coming solar cult event, and one report could ruin everything. His fear hardens into resolve. To protect his scheme, he decides the painter has to die. Then he spots Honey trailing him and assumes it is a tamer spy. Grinning, he plans to catch it and trace it straight back to its master. But the instant he seizes the little spirit, something goes horribly wrong. The world twists and tears apart around him. Back at the hotel, Seo Jio clutches his chest in dread. Honey is gone, staring out over the sleeping city. The painter aches with a loss he can barely name, admitting he might actually cry. Ever since childhood, Cha Eun-hyuk has been able to see strange things no one else can. Figures standing right where others swear no one is there. As a boy, he points one out to a friend, only to be met with confusion, asked if he saw a monster. It isn't a monster, but he learns to swallow the words and pretend he was simply mistaken. The entities sometimes take on shapes eerily close to human. Yet he knows there's something else entirely, beings fundamentally unlike any animal or plant. He hears that a family who acknowledged one of them burned to death inside their home. The whole household lost. The most dangerous ones do appear, quietly driving people to their deaths, though he never senses any real malice from them. Even without ill intent, their mere existence is enough to threaten every human near them. So Eun-hyuk makes a rule. As long as he never provokes them, he can live his whole life pretending he can't see a thing. Now grown, he works a Bungeopang cart, a third-class citizen scraping by to support his family. Then comes the day when pretending is no longer enough, as a hooded figure stops at his stall. Up close, it is a masked, blood-streaked entity, staring down at him from across the counter. To his horror, it speaks, mimicking a human so perfectly that it even asks the price and whether he takes credit cards. A white-haired companion trails it with a strange, many-eyed bird, making Eun-hyuk wonder if the man is a tamer hunter. Terrified that refusing might get him killed, he stammers that he'll fry a fresh batch and forces himself to keep serving. The entity leaves behind a glittering gift as an apology, insisting it never meant to frighten him. The next day, the white-haired hunter returns to the cart and recognizes the vendor from before. He thanks Eun-hyuk for the day prior, then gently presses him with a question. It comes out that the creature's giant bird, called Honey, had swelled up and bitten Eun-hyuk on the head before leaving. The hunter apologizes for the trouble his son caused, leaving Eun-hyuk reeling at the word. The white-haired hunter, a doctor, offers to examine Eun-hyuk for any injuries. The masked entity, it turns out, even carries the memories of a human named Seo Jio, 29 years old. Elsewhere, another hunter tracking these creatures finds the trail gone cold, ending in a blood-streaked room.